Hey, welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy Podcast. Today I'm talking about the flood of 55. Happened 64 years ago this month. I'm going to be interviewing Jodie Mozdzer Gil. She's an associate professor of journalism at Southern Connecticut State University. And about 5, 6, 7 years ago or so, she did for a graduate project this interactive map and video series on the flood of 55, which is still visible on electronicvalley.org. Here we go.
At this time, we take you by telephone recording to Ansonia for the first direct report on conditions in that town in the last 4 hours. Come in, Ansonia.
Hello?
Hello.
Officer, this is George Phillips at WAVZ.
Yeah.
What's the situation in Ansonia?
Well, the Maple Street Bridge caved in and the 1955 station wagon went down through, but the guy jumped out before. He didn't go into the water, the car didn't go.
I see. He escaped, huh? He escaped, officer? Hello?
Hello.
You say he escaped?
That's right.
Uh-huh. What's the situation now in Ansonia? Is there water in...
Well, we got no power or nothing, and Estonic Public Service says they won't have none at least till Sunday.
Sunday?
No lights or nothing.
Uh-huh. What about gas?
There's no gas or anything.
Is there water in the streets of Ansonia?
Oh, yes. They got about 4 foot of water on Main Street yet.
On Main Street. It started to go down, however.
Yeah, it's going down a little, but not much, though.
I see. Have you had any casualties at all?
Not that we know of yet.
Uh-huh. How about houses? Have any been destroyed?
One house and a whole big block in the corner of Maple and High Street.
Uh-huh. What do you hear about Seymour? Anything? Or Naugatuck?
Seymour, they claim the state police are just there now. They claim the whole center of the town is gone.
Gone? Uh-huh.
Well, I know we see 3 or 4 houses come down the river here.
Uh-huh. You have had no casualties in Ansonia?
Not that we know of. We have no report on it.
Uh-huh. Is there still...
We never had no telephone. I don't know how you got in there.
For hundreds of years we brought you the news. For the info we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur, yeah, ride the dinosaur.
All right, so I'm going to begin. You ready? This is going to be awkward. You're Jodie, you know what I mean? So I'm going to go into my podcast thing.
All right, cool.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Navel Gazing. My name is Eugene Driscoll of valleyindy.org. Follow us on Twitter at Valley Indy or on Facebook at Valley Independent Sentinel. Today, we're going to be talking about the flood of 1955. And my guest, I'm very happy to introduce her, is Jodie Mozdzer Gil, an associate professor of journalism at Southern Connecticut State University. Jodie, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Longtime listeners or hate readers, maybe, I don't know either, of the Valley Indy might remember Jodie. She started, or we were both hired to launch this thing back in 2009. This thing I'm referring to, the Valley Indy. Before she left, now, Jodie, we were hired in 2009, and then when did you stop working for us?
So I worked through 2012 through July. So I started teaching at Southern in September of 2012.
It sounds like you have to remember that. Were you like telling me you were going to Shelton meetings and actually teaching at Southern? It sounds like you were being a little...
No.
Right. Which would be fine.
I mean, trying to remember. I stopped working. I took a month off, and then I started teaching. So.
Yeah, you didn't have to be that precise, but my point was like, what I was trying to... You did this project, I think when you were in graduate school, right? That concerned the flood of 55.
Yeah, so I was going to graduate school before I got hired for the Valley Indy. I was taking a class at a time, and then they had a capstone project that you could do anything you wanted. So I said, hey, I'm going to do an oral history of the flood of 55 because I was just so fascinated by, in particular, the lower Naugatuck Valley, just reporting in the towns before I came to the Valley Indy and then during my time there, people were still talking about it. And I'm like, it's a long time since that happened, but you would see photos, when I went to get my oil changed, I'd see a photo on the wall about, from flood damage, or you'd go to the senior center in Ansonia had a line drawn on the wall where the floodwaters went up to. So it's just very present everywhere you went. And I said, I really wanted to find out more about what happened and just sort of talk to people about their memories of it.
It is interesting how, in modern times, we're always worried about forgetting the past, but yeah, you're definitely right. That is not happening here in the Naugatuck Valley, or at least the lower Naugatuck Valley. So tell us what you did. How did you put this project together? And I should let people know, if you go to the Electronic Valley, which is a site that Jack Walsh and another person launched years ago, I guess leading up to probably 19 years ago at this point. It was a real trailblazing site for information and data and all things local in the Valley. That is where this project sits. You had worked out something with Jack where it kind of sits up there permanently, or at least until all the links go corrupt. But what is it?
I looked at it today. There's a couple links that need to be updated, I realized today.
Well, that's how fast. It's just like technology is just, this was 2012, so that's 100,000 years ago in the internet world,
It is. And so basically I just started, I put out a note on our site and said, hey, does anyone have photos they want to share or stories? And I remember just being inundated, and was it Chad Jansen came into the office one day with a record, the documentary of radio coverage from those days.
Yeah, it was something that belonged to it had belonged to his brother. He's since passed away. But yeah, the Jansen brothers, that's how we got this incredible radio documentary.
We take you now to news editor George Phillips for the latest report on the rising floodwaters.
The swollen waters of the Naugatuck River are raising havoc with life and property from north to south. But reports are meager because there is no direct communication. WAVZ's George Lazat is standing by in Waterbury, where a state of emergency also exists. Water in parts of Waterbury measures 7 feet. Power and other utilities are out. Drinking water must be boiled.
The day was August 19th, 1955. A day stamped in the memories of thousands because it changed the course of their lives. This is the story of that day.
Yeah, it was remarkable. I mean, I remember his record was probably a couple hours long, but I just pulled out pieces where they talked about particular stories along the Naugatuck River and re-edited, just took little clips from those radio broadcasts and took photos that people had submitted and sort of paired them up together into short videos and put them onto a map, and just you can sort of click on pieces on that map and see stories from along the river. And then I interviewed people as well. So different people from around the area just got in touch with me and said, yeah, I remember that day really well, and I'm happy to talk with you about it. And we sat down in several different interviews, and just they told their stories.
And this is at electronicvalley.org for anybody who doesn't know that URL. And if you want to get real specific, it's electronicvalley.org/derby/flood/index. If you want to have some fun. And how did you pick out? I'm looking at it right now, and under Seymour, there's a map there under the words Flood 55, and you can click on each dot, which represents a town, and then this an interview pops up. And this one was Frank Haynes recalls water pouring down into his church at the corner of Broad Street and Derby Avenue in Seymour. How did you find the people to talk to?
So I put notes on our site, and then through local historical societies. Frank, I can't remember how he came to me, but it might have been through the Seymour Historical Society, because that's where we did that interview.
And Marion O'Keefe, I think, helped you, right, from Seymour?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And she had a ton of photos that had been donated to them, and I helped her sort of scan them for them, but she let me use them as a result. And So it was really just sort of a community effort of, hey, we want these stories told. And I was just interested in being the one to tell them. Frank was really interesting. I mean, he was talking in particular about the cleanup.
But miraculously, the church and the parish house next to it, they both stayed. And they were getting the brunt of it. They were, you know, it was amazing. It's like a 1770 building. But the whole valley, everybody, I can't really speak for the valley, but everybody in Seymour, everybody pitched in. There were 2 fire departments. The guys were downtown every day for months and months, cleaning out everything, stores, businesses, whatever was left, you know. And we had boards going up the stairs, and we'd fill up wheelbarrows with mud, push them up the boards, and I mean, it would like 12 or 14 stairs, not 3 stairs, you know. It was filled with mud and debris. I mean, every time you stuck the shovel in, you might get a 2x4, you might get, you know, a piece of tree, might get something that washed out of the sports shop, or, you know, I mean, we found fishing poles, sneakers, stuff that got washed out of businesses.
So it was really interesting. It wasn't just, he didn't talk only about that day. He talked about what the community did as a result. How did they sort of come together in the months afterwards?
And then in terms of Seymour, the town you now call home, you moved up there.
Yeah.
Seymour town historian Marion O'Keefe, who we just mentioned, is scheduled to give a presentation about the flood of 55, and specifically, I think maybe its impact on Seymour. It's scheduled for 6:30 p.m. Wednesday. That's August 14th at Seymour Public Library, 46 Church Street. And this is a presentation she's done before, back in 2017, but she added some additional material for this one, so that should be good. Somebody should live stream that, like me. But the Seymour Public Library, like I said, is 46 Church Street, and if you want more information, call the library, 203-888-3903. I also found, Jodie, and I have never seen this before. One thing I love about the internet and local history is every once in a while you can just search something you've searched 100,000 times before on YouTube and something new will pop up. And I found it's actually connected to your university, Southern. It's called The Great Flood of 1955. I have no idea if it was like a student project or it was a production of 6 mixed productions and Southern Connecticut State University. And in that documentary, I want to say it was 10 minutes long or so, they interview Ed Cotter, who was in Derby's civil defense, and he's one of the founders of the Storm Ambulance Corps. He has since passed here in Derby, but his grandson and entire lineage lives on.
Well, I got involved because I was civil defense director at the time, and the morning of the flood, about 4 o'clock, I got a telephone call that they needed a boat up in Ansonia.
And Charles Seccombe is on there, who you also interviewed. Yeah. And Charles Seccombe is such a class act. You just look at that guy and you think, well, there's a gentleman, in the old-fashioned sense of the word. Do you remember anything Charles Seccombe told you specifically? Was there anything that stood out in his story?
Yeah, so he was one of 3 people, I think, who spoke about the Maple Street Bridge in Ansonia was just pulled away from the road and floated downriver with there was apparently a man in a station wagon on the bridge as this was happening.
5 o'clock in the morning, my dad got a call from a gentleman up in Winston who had a men's store, and he said, we're devastated. The whole main street's gone. My store's gone, meaning his store was gone. And he said, I think you'll find the water's coming your way. So we called a number of the merchants to tell them that a flood was coming. And at that time, we went up the street and saw some of the birds, said, well, can we help you clean up your basements to put it up? So we did. We went to some of the stores. We ended up at Marvin's Shoe, which was across the street here. And started, I never saw so many shoes in boxes down there, but we brought them all up, but we set them on the floor and some in chairs. And never believing we were going to get water here because we never have had it. We've had winter floods but it's when it's the melt. Mm-hmm. And it would come up just over onto the railroad tracks. Kennytown Dam let go up in by Seymour, where Daddy is, and come down, hit the American Brass Steel Bridge, hit the Maple Street Bridge, and when it did, it threw it over to the western part of the town. And that, of course, just put a big wave.
And Mr. Seccombe passed away in 2017. He was 91 years old, married for 68 years to Agnes Nancy Seccombe. So rest in peace, Mr. Seccombe. In your documentary or your audio documentary, or your little snippets of audio documentaries, I guess, you also talked to Ted Vartelis.
Mm-hmm.
Is that? Yep. I'm not sure. I want to say Vartelis, but it's Vartelis. Is that right? Do you know?
I would say Vartelis, yeah.
All right. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, but I'm not a broadcaster. But his family owned, he was on the Maple Street store, and the entire bridge and the store went kaput when the waters came.
We were at the grocery store. And I believe, we got there about 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30, we were opening up the store and saw the, river start to rise. The water started to come in the cellar downstairs. It never had happened before, never. The water used to get high, but it never came into the store. I said, oh my God. So anyway, the bottom line, it kept rising. I got up to I'm trying to remember, the floor level, and now it's on the streets. And probably as high as the meter. And Pete and I, we walked up to the bridge to see how high the water was. Unbelievable, it was like right beneath us. And further up, there was a trestle where people used to go to work to the American Brass. And the trestle was all dark, black-like. Holy Jesus. So what had happened is all the debris coming downstream, the boxes, the trees and the caskets from Seymour, whatever, we're backing up. So I said to Pete, or Pete said to me, I said, geez, we better get those people out. And so we went up the third floor, and there was, I think, 3 people, a husband and a wife, and maybe another elderly gentleman. But they wouldn't leave. I said, you got to get out of here. Wouldn't leave. So we actually forcibly took them out. I said, you got to get out of here. Otherwise. So then they would have been gone. They would have been dead. Across the street was another bar. It was called Zybords. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget. They were, they used to drink early in the morning. Guy was walking out, and the water was going through there, and he was like drunk. And somehow, when he got out the main entrance, he got started to get swept away, and the owner came out and grabbed him by the arm, pulled him in. He would have been gone, but now the water's really racing, and there's no way we could get up Franklin Street or High Street, because now the water is, is going through Broad Street. I'm looking across the street at the building, and I hear a crack. And all of a sudden, it started to back off. It's part of the front stayed there, but the thing started to back off, and then the river took that. It was a huge building. So now you're looking at, say for example, that was a storefront there. You're looking at half of it, and that's all that remained. And there was a big gully there, I thought we were goners, because you don't know the water. You know how the water eats the ground away, and you don't know how far under it was. The state would not let us build there. Mm-hmm. It says you own the land, but you can't build there. And what they did is, because there was a bend in the river, they wanted to straighten it out, so they took our land and maybe left us a little piece of land where you couldn't even put a hot dog stand there. As a matter of fact, I could venture to say my family took the biggest percentage loss of anybody in the valley. not dollar-wise, because we were 100% wiped out, whereas other ones could go back, you know. So it was traumatic, you know. One day you have something, an acid, and next day you got absolutely nothing.
If you go across, I guess, Maple Street on the corner of, I don't remember what road that is right there, but there's a sign where his family store used to be, and it's like this little piece of grass, and you're like, how was a store here? But that's because part of the land is just no longer there.
On this site stood the Vartelis family food store, in existence for half a century. Begun in 1905 by two Greek immigrants, John and Pataskavi Vartelis. And on that day, as the water rose, Pataskavi, a widow of only about 5 months, was hearing about the catastrophe. She was encouraged to walk from her home on Upper Franklin Street down to the top of Maple Street. She looked down Maple Street, saw that the Vartelis block, which had been the family sustenance for half a century, had been ravaged and was gone. She simply shook her head, blessed herself, and turned and walked home. That widow and her family moved forward, just like the valley.
You know, this flood removed entire blocks from the area. It's really amazing to think about.
And Seymour, you had I don't even know how you got this person, but you interviewed a woman whose name I don't have in front of me, who had actually witnessed, because 2 people died in Seymour.
Yes, she was with Frank, and she didn't want to go on camera, but she didn't mind having her voice recorded. But she said she witnessed these 2 women who went back into their home, and then the home was swept down the river.
I was in the cemetery watching them. I can still hear the women's screams as they went over the falls.
Yeah.
And Seymour was hit really hard, right? Were they hit I've heard Pekin Falls was the worst. Seymour was the worst. From talking to people, what town in the Lower Valley seemed to really get hit the hardest?
It kind of depends on what you consider being hit the worst. I mean, I don't remember numbers of people who died in each town, but Beacon Falls lost the most number of homes. They lost 78 homes.
Yes, from Ansonia, I drove toward Seymour, but I had to leave my car a mile away. After crossing the only remaining link into the town, a footbridge, I talked with workers who had rescued hundreds and hundreds that day. Not all their efforts could succeed. Earlier, they had tried to persuade 2 elderly women to leave their home. For hours, the women haggled and refused. As the water rose, they called for help. The rescuers had them almost within their grasp when the angry torrent snatched the pair from their grip, pulled them into the swirling waters. They have not been seen since.
Seymour and Sonia each lost 60 homes, so they were up there. In terms of dollar amount, I didn't break it down by town, but the whole Naugatuck Valley, you know, they had an industrial property loss. It was $28.36 million. So there was a lot of damage.
I wanted to thank you for, first of all, doing this project and having this sit out there where anybody in the valley, if they're aware of it, can go learn some stuff about the flood of 55.
Yeah, thanks for talking about it, because I think, you know, especially if you're new to the valley, this is something that is so central to what makes the community what it is. It's, you know, it was totally, the community changed as a result of this, so it's good to know about it.
And then, okay, if you don't mind me bringing it up, you have a daughter now, a baby.
Yes.
How old is she?
She is 6.5 months old.
Wow.
Yeah. She's Seymour. I don't know if she's Seymour's youngest resident now, but she's down there. She's one of its youngest.
And how's that going? A total. Actually, we were commiserating a little bit before I hit record. We were just sort of. I don't know. We both
I was wondering. Does
you
it
sound
get
tired.
Easier, but
what'd you say?
Yeah, I am. I said, does it get any easier? And I don't think it does. It's, you know, it's a new thing. It's totally new to me, and I like a challenge. But then there's some days when I'm like, oh my goodness, this is way harder than I could have ever imagined. But she's beautiful, and it's really, it's highs and lows, but it's more highs at this point. So
anyway, I kept you for long enough. You probably have things to do, like work and taking care of a baby and all that good stuff. So Thanks again, Jodie.
Well, hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
19 inches of torrential rains falling in 60 hours over 6 northeast states bring about the worst flood disaster in recorded American history. Already drenched by the downpour accompanying Hurricane Connie a week previous, swollen streams run amok through one of the most populous and industrial sections of the nation.
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur, yeah, ride the dinosaur. Our readers are in the opens each day, yeah. Online clickbait a prurient way, yeah. It's free information here to stay, yeah. Not even hookers give it away, yeah. Advertising, metastasizing, newsroom shrinking, constant attrition. We'll ride the dinosaur, we'll ride the dinosaur. Dinosaur. Deadlines, bylines, pictures too. An editorial comment for a buck or two. Fire down the block, the murder next door. And now we wonder what it's all for. Social media coming free to you, funny pages, the mayor's wages, criminal seats, corruption schemes, ink state wretches asking tough questions. We'll ride the dinosaur, yeah, ride the dinosaur. The presses are running all through the night. We're printing the truth with all of our might. We're platform agnostics, got that interweb too. Buy an ad, see what we can do. We still have subscribers, still have our fans. We're here every day, so give us a chance or we'll make an art stand. Just hold us in your hand, and we'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. Dinosaur.